Welcome to the deep dive. We're all about unpacking complex ideas, finding that, profound simplicity that often gets hidden underneath layers of how we usually think.
Hmm.
Today, we're really embarking on quite an extraordinary journey, I think, right to the core of human experience. We'll be exploring concepts that promise, well, liberation from suffering, really, and a clearer path towards genuine inner peace.
Indeed, it's a significant undertaking.
It is. We're delving into a work that truly challenges us to fundamentally re-examine our relationship with our own minds and even our understanding of time itself.
Absolutely. We'll be exploring the transformative insights from Eckhart Tolle's work, The Power of Now. And like you said, this isn't just about understanding a philosophy intellectually.
Right, not just academics.
No, not at all. It's really an invitation to recognize these, well, timeless truths that might resonate quite deeply within you, offering a practical, sort of actionable pathway to a more conscious, freer, and ultimately a more fulfilling way of existing.
And our mission today really is to pull out the most potent insights from this material, not just to summarize, but to really help you, the listener, grasp the essence of what it means to be truly present,
Hmm.
to break free from those, stubborn habitual patterns of thought and emotion that so often keep us feeling stuck.
Yeah, those loops we get into.
Exactly. And maybe discover that vast, unshakable inner treasure that Tully speaks about so eloquently. So yeah, get ready to maybe shift your perspective a bit on time, identity, and the very nature of your being.
It's potentially life-changing stuff.
Definitely feels like it. So to kick things off, let's just establish some foundational concepts from this really powerful work. First up, this word enlightenment. For many people, it conjures up something almost superhuman, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Levitation, mystical powers.
Yeah, exactly. Something totally unattainable. But how does this work redefine enlightenment for us in a way that maybe feels, I don't know, incredibly accessible, relevant to just everyday life?
That's a great starting point. Tolle, well, he radically redefines it. It's not about gaining something extra, some special quality. It's actually about losing something.
Losing something. Okay.
Yeah. Specifically, he describes it very simply as the end of suffering. Full stop.
The end of suffering. Wow.
It's essentially a return to your natural state, a felt sense of oneness with what he calls being. Now, this being, it's described as this immeasurable, indestructible essence that is fundamentally you, but it's also greater than your individual name and form.
So it's our true nature beneath the surface stuff.
Precisely. Finding your true nature beyond the labels, the mental constructs, the stories we tell ourselves. And when that happens, the illusion of being separate from everything else, which is, the root of so much fear and conflict, that starts to dissolve.
Okay.
And crucially, he also calls it the end of what he terms dreadful enslavement to incessant thinking.
The constant mind chatter.
That endless noise, yes. So the work suggests this state of liberation isn't something you achieve or acquire through effort. It's actually already within you. It's an inherent truth that just needs to be, well, remembered, a return to your original state before the mind's chatter sort of took over and obscured it.
That's quite a provocative definition. The end of suffering. It almost sounds too simple, given how deeply ingrained suffering feels in the human condition.
It does sound simple, but the implications are vast.
Yeah. So if it's truly about the end of incessant thinking, then our minds, which are, let's face it, constantly active, they must be the primary obstacle, right? The main blockage.
That's exactly the central insight Tolle presents.
How does he suggest our mind often works against us then, rather than for us?
He makes this really crucial distinction. The mind itself, he says, is a superb instrument when used rightly.
Okay, so it has its place.
Absolutely. But when used wrongly, or rather, when it uses us, it becomes destructive. And that, he says, is the more common scenario. It often uses us. He even calls this the disease of humanity.
The disease.
Yeah. Yeah. So the core delusion, the fundamental mistake, is believing you are your mind. Believing that the relentless internal monologue, the stream of judgments, the worries, the plans, that is who you are.
Instead of just activity happening.
Exactly. In reality, he suggests, the instrument has taken you over. It's like being possessed, he says, but without even knowing it. Most people, he argues, are run by these involuntary thought processes, that incessant internal monologue or dialogue that's constantly commenting, speculating, judging, complaining, liking, disliking, worrying.
Nonstop.
Nonstop. And this voice, this stream, is often completely disconnected from the present moment. He's constantly dredging up the past or projecting into these imaginary, often quite negative future scenarios.
Right, replaying old hurts or worrying about what might go wrong.
Precisely. So this conditioned mind views the present moment through these distorting filters of past experiences and future anxieties. This creates a skewed, usually negative perception of reality. And in doing so, it becomes your own worst enemy. It attacks you, punishes you from within, drains your vital energy, and just perpetuates this cycle of misery and unhappiness.
That's quite a
He
picture.
poses a challenge. Can you find the off button for this constant thinking? Can you choose to be free from your mind whatever you want? If not, he suggests, then the mind is almost certainly using you.
That image of being possessed by our own minds is it's chilling, isn't it? And honestly, quite relatable on some days.
Very relatable for most people, I think.
It really sounds like the mind is just relentlessly pulling us away from what's actually happening, from the unfolding reality right in front of us.
Away from life itself.
Which perfectly highlights why the very next concept from Tolley's work is so incredibly vital. The now. What exactly is the now, and why is it presented as so profoundly important for our liberation?
The now. Well, it's the one point that exists outside of what Tolley calls psychological time. It's eternal, and he emphasizes uniquely precious.
Outside of time.
Outside of psychological time, yes. He states it quite unequivocally. Nothing ever truly happened in the past, and nothing will ever truly happen in the future. Everything only ever happens in the now.
Okay, that needs unpacking. How can nothing have happened in the past?
What we perceive as the past, he argues, is simply a memory trace, a former now stored within our minds. When you recall something from the past, you're not actually traveling back in time. You're reactivating that memory trace right now in the present moment.
Ah, I see. The remembering happens now.
Exactly. And similarly, what we imagine as the future is merely a projection of the mind. And when that projected future arrives, if it does, it will also manifest as the now.
Always now.
Always now. The present moment is the singular, unchanging reality of existence. And because of that, it holds the absolute key to liberation, because it's the only point where we can access being, that deeper reality we talked about.
So focusing on past and future actually makes us miss the only reality there is.
That's the core idea. The more you're focused on psychological time, dwelling on past regrets, or obsessing about future outcomes, the more you inevitably miss the now, which is, ironically, the most precious thing there is. It's where life actually happens.
It makes sense when you put it like that.
And Tull points out that spiritual masters throughout history, figures like Jesus or the Buddha, have consistently pointed to the now as the fundamental key. Even if their teachings sometimes got misunderstood or obscured over time,
Right.
the very essence of Zen, for instance, is about living right on what's called the razor's edge of now, being so utterly, completely present that no problems, nothing mind-made, can actually survive in that space.
That makes so much sense. It's like we spend our lives watching a mental movie about life rather than truly experiencing the actual unfolding reality.
That's a very good analogy, lost in the movie.
So let's delve a bit deeper into this fundamental obstacle, the mind. If the mind uses us, as Tolley suggests, how does that actually show up in our daily lives? And what's the direct link to our emotional experience, our feelings?
Well, the mind's insidious use of us. Tolley highlights this with a really powerful distinction. He says, just because you can solve a complex crossword puzzle or, contribute to building something as technically intricate as an atom bomb, that doesn't automatically mean you were using your mind effectively.
Okay, so intelligence isn't the same as conscious use.
Exactly. Often, he argues, it's your mind using you. It gets its teeth into problems, whether they're real or completely imagined. It just chews on them endlessly. This mind is perpetually concerned with keeping the past alive. Why? Because without that past narrative, the egoic sense of who I am feels threatened, like it might dissolve.
Ah, so identity is tied to the past.
Deeply. And then it compulsively projects itself into the future, creating this persistent internal narrative that promises, okay, one day, when this happens, or I achieve that, or I get this thing, then finally I'll be okay. Then I'll be happy, at peace.
The I'll be happy when syndrome.
Precisely. And this unobserved mind, which Tolley essentially equates with the ego, perceives itself as this separate little fragment adrift in a vast, often seemingly hostile universe.
A feeling of isolation.
Yes, and this fundamental misperception gives rise to all these ingrained patterns. Resistance to what is needing to control situations and people, power dynamics, greed, defensiveness, attack, you name it.
All those lovely human traits.
Indeed. But the critical insight here is that these egoic strategies, they never actually solve the ego's perceived problems. Why? Because the ego is the problem itself. It's this deep identification with the mind, with its endless stream of thoughts, concepts, labels, judgments, that creates this kind of opaque screen.
A screen?
Yeah, a screen that blocks your true relationship with your own deeper self, your being. It blocks genuine connection with other people, with the natural world, and with, well, whatever term you prefer, the divine, universal consciousness, life itself.
Yeah.
It's a constant barrier to presence and true connection.
So the mind isn't just a voice chattering away. It's this deeply ingrained system of belief that constructs and fiercely defends our very identity, our sense of self.
That's a very accurate way to describe it.
And how do our emotions fit into this picture? The material seems to draw a very direct, almost immediate line between our thoughts and our feelings.
Absolutely direct. Emotion, fundamentally, is defined as the body's reaction to your mind. It's a direct physical reflection of your mind's activity manifesting in your body.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. So if your mind generates, say, a hostile thought about someone, your body immediately responds with the biochemical changes we associate with anger, heat, tension, maybe a faster heartbeat. Or if you have a thought related to threat, what if this bad thing happens? Your body instantly manifests fear, again, with corresponding physical sensations and hormonal shifts.
It's automatic.
Completely automatic. And what's crucial here, and often missed, is that we are frequently unconscious of our deeply entrenched thought patterns. They run on autopilot.
We don't even realize we're thinking them.
Often not. So it's primarily through observing our emotions, really feeling them in the body without judgment, that we can begin to bring those underlying, often hidden thought patterns into our conscious awareness.
So the emotion is like a clue to the hidden thought.
Exactly. Totally suggests that if there's ever a conflict between what you think you're feeling, oh, fine, and what you're actually feeling in your body, not your stomach, tension in your shoulders, the emotion always offers a truer, more honest reflection of your current state of mind.
That's interesting. Trust the feeling more than the thought about the feeling.
Yes. And observing an emotion is quite similar to watching a thought, but it carries a much stronger, more visceral physical component. By simply observing it, feeling the anger, the fear, the sadness, without getting caught up in the story around it, without resisting it or judging it.
Just letting it be there.
Just letting it be there. You step into the role of the watcher, the observing presence. This allows the emotion to simply exist without you being controlled or overwhelmed by it. And this very act breaks the unconscious identification. It brings those often deeply buried unconscious patterns into the light of your conscious awareness where they can begin to dissolve.
That makes incredible sense. And that leads us to this, well, rather unsettling concept Tolkien introduces, the pain body. It sounds like a significant, almost parasitic part of our emotional landscape. What exactly is it and how does it operate?
The emotional pain body.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a profound and, for many, a challenging concept to really grasp, but it's absolutely central to understanding why suffering persists so strongly. Tolle describes it as an accumulated negative energy field. It's made up of all the past emotional pain you've experienced and, crucially, not fully faced and accepted in the moment it arose. This pain gets lodged not just in the mind as memories, but deep within the body's cellular structure.
Like trapped energy.
Exactly. Think of it as a semi-autonomous energetic entity, a kind of psychic parasite, a reservoir of old hurts, resentments, grief, anger, trauma, all coalesced together.
Wow.
Now, this pain body can lie dormant for periods, just waiting in the background. But it becomes active, it wakes up, when triggered by various situations, particularly situations that resonate energetically with some kind of past emotional pain.
So something now reminds it of something old.
Precisely. An innocent remark from a colleague, for instance, might suddenly activate it if it touches an old, unhealed wound related to criticism from childhood, causing a completely disproportionate emotional reaction.
Right, like overreacting massively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's the critical insight. Like any entity, Tolle suggests, the pain body wants to survive. And it can only survive if it gets you to unconsciously identify with it.
Meaning, believe that you are that pain.
Yes, when it's triggered, it rises up, takes you over, essentially becomes you for that period, and then it lives through you. It needs to get its food, its nourishment through you. And it feeds on any experience that resonates with its own kind of energy,
Which is pain?
which is pain. It thrives on anything that creates further pain. Anger, rage, destructiveness, hatred, guilt, intense grief, any kind of emotional drama. It literally finds experiences of joy, peace, or genuine love quite indigestible. You can't feed on those.
That's quite sinister.
It can feel that way. And in its more insidious manifestations, the pain body will even unconsciously create situations in your life through your reactions, your behavior, that are likely to generate more pain just to perpetuate its own cycle. Because pain can only feed on pain.
So it sabotages happiness to stay alive.
In a sense, yes. Tolda describes it as a dark shadow cast by the ego. And paradoxically, it's deeply afraid of the light of consciousness, your presence, because that light is what ultimately dissolves it.
So it's almost like this separate, autonomous entity living inside us, feeding on our suffering, and subtly orchestrating our lives just to ensure its own survival.
That's a good way to understand the concept, yes. It sounds dramatic, but reflects the experience many people have with recurring negative emotional patterns.
Okay, so how on earth do we break free from this if it's so deeply ingrained and, well, insidious?
To transcend the pain body, Tolle emphasizes one absolute crucial step. You must observe it.
Observe it, not fight it.
Not fight it, not try to suppress it or wish it away. That just creates more inner conflict and actually fuels it further. Instead, you simply observe it. Feel its raw energy within your body without judging it, without mentally labeling it. Oh, there's my anger again. And most importantly, without identifying with it. Don't say, I'm angry. Say, there is anger in me.
Create that separation.
Exactly. This is where presence comes in. Presence is that higher dimension of consciousness, the witnessing awareness, that breaks the identification. When you are present, you become the conscious space in which the pain body arises and dissolves, rather than being unconsciously overtaken by it.
So watching it is enough.
Simply watching it is the key, and this act of watching implies a radical acceptance of it as part of what is in that particular moment. Doesn't mean you like it, but you allow it to be there.
Okay.
This sustained, conscious attention severs the vital link between the pain body and your thought processes. Because normally the pain body triggers thoughts, and those thoughts then feed the emotion, creating a vicious cycle.
Right, the thoughts keep the feeling going.
Exactly. But when you watch the feeling directly, without thinking about it, you stop feeding it with more thoughts and reactions. That raw, intense emotional energy then gets transmuted. It doesn't just disappear, it transforms. Tolle even describes this process as a form of esoteric alchemy, transforming the lead of suffering into the gold of consciousness. It actually makes the flame of your own awareness burn more brightly.
Wow, so the pain itself becomes fuel for awakening.
That's the potential, yes. But here's the biggest hurdle, and this is really insightful.
Okay.
If a large part of your existing sense of self, your very identity, has become unconsciously invested in this unhappy pain body, maybe you define yourself as someone who's suffered a lot or someone who's always angry, then there can be a deep unconscious fear of losing that familiar identity, however painful it is.
Fear of losing who you think you are.
Precisely. And this fear creates strong resistance to disidentifying from the pain. But Tolle assures us, the moment you become truly aware that you are attached to your pain, or perhaps even deriving a subtle, unconscious satisfaction from it.
Like feeling self-righteous or victimized.
Exactly. The moment you see that attachment clearly, it's already broken. Awareness itself is the great liberator.
This idea of the pain body and the mind's constant activity feeding it, it's incredibly insightful. And for many, I imagine, quite a difficult truth to really face.
It requires honesty and courage, definitely.
But this also leads us directly to what Tolle presents as perhaps the biggest illusion of all, time itself. How does he break down this delusion of time, and why is it so fundamental to our suffering?
The core delusion, the root of so much unnecessary suffering, is what Tolle calls the loss of now. And this loss of now, he says, is synonymous with the loss of being, that connection to our deeper self.
Okay.
When you lose that connection to the yes, and a mere situation, an event, or even just an emotion instantly transforms. It goes from being something that simply is unfolding in the present into a personal problem and a source of deep suffering.
So the problem isn't the situation, but losing the now around it.
That's the essence of it. He introduces the concept of psychological time. This isn't clock time, which we need for practical purposes. Psychological time is the pervasive identification with the past, constantly dwelling on memories, regrets, grievances, replaying old stories.
Living in yesterday.
Yes. And simultaneously, the compulsive projection into the future, endless worry, planning not just practically but obsessively, anticipation, or holding onto the belief that something better is always just around the corner. never here now.
Waiting for life to start.
Exactly. This creates an endless preoccupation, a constant mental noise that prevents us from honoring and acknowledging the profound reality, the aliveness of the present moment. Toll emphasized that the past gives us our sense of identity. This is who I am because of what happened to me, and the future holds this illusory promise of salvation. I'll finally be happy when X, Y, or Z occurs. But both, he insists, are ultimately illusions when we live in them psychologically.
Illusions. Strong word.
It is. Because when you're trapped in psychological time, your life loses its vibrancy, its freshness, its sense of wonder. Everything is filtered through past conditioning or future anxiety. The very essence of what Tolle is conveying about time, he stresses, cannot be grasped by the thinking mind alone. It requires a fundamental shift in consciousness,
This is from
the realm of the chattering mind to the quiet, vast reality of being, from the perceived linearity of time to the felt experience of the timelessness of presence.
that distinction between objective clock time, needing to know when the meeting starts, and this subjective psychological time makes so much sense. It really does feel like we often live in a constant mental movie rather than the actual unfolding reality right here.
Yeah, the movie metaphor works well. We're directors and actors in a film playing only in our heads.
So what are the consequences, maybe the collective consequences, of this widespread delusion of psychological time? He talks about it not just individually, right?
He does. Tolle highlights the collective insanity, as he calls it, that is born from psychological time, particularly through ideologies or rigid belief systems that prioritize a future ideal over present reality.
Can you give an example?
Well, he cites historical examples like, say, extreme forms of communism or certain extremist religious doctrines. These ideologies often sacrifice, and sometimes still do, the present well-being and indeed the very lives of countless human beings for the sake of a projected future highest good or some idealized heaven on earth.
Doing terrible things now for a promised future utopia.
Precisely. He points out the stark reality that millions were often murdered or endured immense suffering in the name of creating a future paradise, resulting only in a present hell. A chilling illustration of how the belief in a future ideal, no matter how seemingly noble, can be used to justify horrific, inhumane actions in the present moment.
That's sobering.
And on an individual level, he argues that all negativity and suffering can ultimately be traced back to this accumulation of psychological time and the denial or rejection of the present moment.
All negativity. That's a bold claim.
It is, but consider it. Unease, anxiety, tension, stress, chronic worry. These all stem from living too much in an imagined, often feared future.
Makes sense.
Conversely, guilt, regret, resentment, bitterness, sadness, the inability to forgive, these are all rooted in living too much in the past, holding on to what was.
Right. Stuck in yesterday's pain.
Exactly. And Tolle notes that most people find it incredibly difficult to truly believe that a state of consciousness completely free of all these forms of negativity is even possible. It seems like an impossible dream.
It does, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
negativity is just part of being human.
Yet this is precisely the liberated state that all profound spiritual teachings across different traditions and cultures consistently point towards.
Yeah.
It's not about being blissfully happy all the time in a superficial sense, but about being free from the compulsive creation of suffering by the mind.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, the problems we perceive in our lives, they're actually rooted in this time-bound mind, not necessarily inherent in the external circumstances themselves.
Precisely. That's a crucial distinction. Tolle posits that genuine problems, as we typically experience them, are fundamentally mind-made creations, and they need psychological time to survive. They cannot exist in the now.
They can't exist in the now. How so?
When you are fully present, truly anchored in the now. Now, he argues it's impossible to actually have a problem. You might have a situation, maybe a challenging circumstance, a task that needs doing, a physical discomfort, but in the pure awareness of the desosper. Now, it's simply a situation, something to be dealt with, acted upon if necessary, or perhaps totally accepted if nothing can be done right now.
So what makes it a problem then?
A problem is defined as dwelling on a situation mentally, usually with negative thoughts and emotions, without any true intention or possibility of taking immediate effective action. And then, crucially, unconsciously allowing that mental construct, that situation plus negative reaction, to become an integral part of your sense of self, your identity.
Ah, so I am someone who has this problem.
Exactly. For example, maybe you have a financial challenge. Now that's a situation you can potentially address with clear action. But if you constantly worry about it endlessly replay past financial mistakes in your head, and obsess about what terrible things might happen in the future. Then it becomes a heavy, mind-made problem that drains your energy and prevents clear thinking.
It takes on a life of its own.
It does. So he urges us to die to the past every moment, which doesn't mean forgetting it entirely, but letting go of its psychological weight. Release it fully and completely unless it is absolutely and practically relevant to the present moment for learning something or taking action now.
Only use it if it helps now.
Yes. And instead, focus all your attention on the immense power and fullness of being that is only available in the now. He asks this deceptively simple yet profoundly challenging question. What is wrong with this moment? Right now. Not next week, not 5 minutes ago, this exact moment.
Oh.
He subtly suggests that when you strip away all the mental labels, the judgments, the stories, there truly is nothing inherently wrong with the present moment itself. It just is.
That takes some contemplation.
It does. So the fundamental choice for transformation, the core decision, is simply to choose to create no more pain for yourself. To stop feeding suffering through identification with these mind-made problems rooted in psychological time. This choice, while it sounds radical in its implications, is entirely possible, he insists, by consciously accessing the power inherent in the now.
That's a truly profound reframing of our entire experience. So, okay, if the mind creates so much of our suffering and it's constantly pulling us out of the present, how do we actively cultivate the state of presence? How do we consciously connect with this being in a more sustained way?
Well, first let's clarify being. It's described as, the eternal, ever-present one life. It's not only beyond all the forms we see, but it also resides deep within every form, every person, every animal, every plant, as its innermost indestructible essence.
The life within the form.
Exactly. And it's accessible as your own deepest self, your true nature. But, and this is key, it can only be felt, known directly, when the mind is relatively still and your attention is intensely anchored in the now. It's your invisible and indestructible reality.
So you can't think your way to it.
No. You cannot grasp it with your intellect or try to understand it logically. The mind is the wrong tool for that job. You can only know it experientially, by abiding in that deeply rooted, wordless state of awareness.
And presence is related to this.
Yes. Presence is essentially when being becomes conscious of itself through you. It's pure consciousness, intensely alive, alert, awake, but entirely free from the noise of compulsive involuntary thought.
So it's not zoning out.
Not at all. Quite the opposite. When you are truly present, Tully says, you are more fully yourself than you ever are when lost in thought. You shed the conditioned personality, the little me that's rooted in past conditioning and future projections. It's not a trance-like state. It's a heightened state of alertness and awareness.
More awake, not less.
Much more awake. And fascinatingly, he also suggests that this state of heightened presence actually raises the vibrational frequency of the body's energy field. This can contribute to a tangible sense of increased physical vitality and well-being, a feeling of lightness.
Interesting. How do we actually practice this then? It sounds like something we need to actively engage with, not just understand intellectually. How do we get to this state of presence and make it a more consistent part of our daily lives?
The primary path, the most fundamental practice Tully offers, involves what he calls watching the thinker.
Watching the thinker.
Yes. This means learning to observe your thoughts as they arise in your mind, but doing so without judging them, without engaging with them, and crucially, without identifying with them as you or your thoughts. Just noticing them.
Like clouds passing in the sky.
That's a common analogy, yes. This act of detached observation subtly withdraws energy from the mind's compulsive activity. It stops feeding the thought machine. And in doing so, it begins to open up this timeless dimension within your consciousness. When you simply observe your mind, you realize you are no longer trapped in it.
Because there's an observer.
Exactly. A witnessing presence, a deeper awareness, has come into being. And that awareness is presence.
So it's not about trying to stop thoughts, because that feels impossible sometimes.
Right. Trying to stop thoughts is often just another thought, creating more mental effort. It's much simpler, though not always easy. It's about stepping back, noticing the mental chatter, the stream of judgment, the anxieties about tomorrow, the replays of yesterday as if it's happening on a screen in front of you without getting emotionally entangled in the drama.
Just noticing.
Just noticing. The moment you simply observe these thoughts impersonally, a subtle but profound shift occurs. You realize, I am the awareness that is observing the thought. I am not the thought itself. This simple act creates a small gap, a moment of stillness between thoughts. And that gap, however brief, is your entry point to presence.
Find the gaps.
Find the gaps, or create them through conscious attention. Another very practical way is to direct your attention fully into now through routine everyday activities. Transform them from mundane chores you rush through into an end in themselves.
Like washing dishes.
Exactly. Or walking upstairs. Pay exquisite attention to every single step, the movement of your body, your breathing, or truly feel the sensations of the warm water and soap on your hands when washing them, without your mind wandering off. This deep immersion in simple acts, being fully present with the sensory experience, is the essence of what many traditions call mindfulness, or meditation in action.
Being present with the small things.
Yes. And Tola emphasizes that one profound experience of presence, while valuable, isn't usually enough for a permanent shift. It requires choosing to be present more and more often, deliberately bringing awareness into your daily life, making it an ongoing practice, not just a one-off event you hope for.
That's a practical and accessible starting point, watching the thinker, being present in daily activities. Tolle also introduces this fascinating idea of portals to the unmanifested. That sounds quite mystical. What are these doorways and how do they help us connect with this deeper, formless dimension?
It might sound mystical, but the unmanifested isn't presented as some distant, otherworldly realm. Tolle describes it simply as the formless, invisible source of all things. It's the pure potential, the underlying consciousness that enables everything manifested in our world, everything we can see, touch, and experience.
Like the space everything exists in.
That's a good way to think of it. Like the silent canvas on which all of life's experiences are painted. It's the no thing that enables everything to be. The material identifies several portals or doorways we can use to consciously access this unmanifested dimension. And, as we've discussed, the now is considered the main essential portal. All other portals basically lead you into the now.
Okay. What's one of these key portals?
A very direct and powerful one is the inner body. This isn't about thinking about your body or looking at it from the outside. It's about truly inhabiting it from within.
Feeling it from the inside out.
Exactly. It means directing your attention into your body, feeling its subtle inner energy field. You start by feeling the subtle aliveness, maybe a tingling, a warmth, or just a sense of vibrancy in specific parts like your hands or feet. Then you expand that awareness to feel your arms, legs, abdomen, chest, head, eventually feeling the entire inner body simultaneously as a single, unified field of energy.
That sounds very grounding.
It's incredibly grounding. This practice anchors you powerfully in the now. It prevents your mind from scattering into past or future, or getting lost in external distractions or obsessive thinking. Tolle describes feeling the inner body as the most direct doorway into being.
And there are other benefits, too.
Yes, he suggests that the more conscious attention you direct into your inner body, the higher its vibrational frequency becomes. This apparently makes you less susceptible to the draining effects of negative thought forms, strengthens your physical immune system, and even, he claims, can slow down the biological aging process. It's a very practical, empowering practice you can do anytime, anywhere.
So feeling our body from within, that can lead to deeper awareness and maybe even physical benefits. That's quite something. What are some of the other portals he mentions?
Another vital portal is simply the cessation of thinking. This means consciously creating gaps in that otherwise incessant mind stream.
How do we do that consciously?
Well, practices like conscious breathing, which we touched on, simply focusing your attention entirely on the physical sensation of your breath flowing in and out, perhaps feeling it in your abdomen rise and fall, or intensely looking at a flower, really seeing its details, its aliveness, without any mental commentary or labeling. Oh, that's pretty rose. Or truly listening to music without analyzing it. These are all ways to bring about moments of no thought. This, essentially, is the core of formal meditation. When you are intensely present with something non-conceptual, the compulsive mind activity naturally subsides, even if only for a few seconds at first.
Finding moments of mental silence.
Precisely. Then there's silence itself as a portal. This invites you to pay attention not just to sounds, but to the silence out of which all sounds arise, and into which they eventually return. You listen for the silence that surrounds and permeates all sounds.
The space between the sounds.
Yes, and the silence underneath them. Silence without, he says, cultivates stillness within. Every sound is born out of silence and returns to silence. Silence is what enables the sound to be perceived at all. By consciously listening for the silence, even noticing the brief pauses between words in a conversation, you cultivate an inner stillness, an awareness of the unmanifested.
That's a shift in focus. Listening for silence, not sound.
Exactly. And similarly, space is presented as a profound portal. Tolle points out that just as no sound can exist without silence, nothing manifested can exist without nothing the empty space that enables it to be.
Like the space in this room.
Yes, the empty space in a room, the gaps between objects, or contemplate the sheer vastness of space in the cosmos. This can lead to an awareness of no mind, of the underlying emptiness that is the source of all form. He even mentions physics, noting that seemingly solid matter is actually almost entirely empty space at the subatomic level. Contemplating this nothingness not as a void, but as a living presence, a field of potential, opens this profound portal.
Seeing the space, not just the objects.
Seeing the space as the potential for objects. And finally, perhaps the most challenging but also most transformative portal is surrender.
Surrender. That sounds passive.
It can sound that way, but Tolle defines it very specifically. It means letting go of all inner mental emotional resistance to what is in the present moment. It's not about resignation or giving up on action. It's an active internal yes to the reality of this moment exactly as it is, even if you don't like it.
Accepting what is, internally.
Yes, because when you resist what is, this shouldn't be happening. You create inner conflict. You cut yourself off from others, from your true self, and from the natural flow of life itself. Resistance strengthens the ego's sense of separateness and feeds suffering. In surrender, your form identity, the egoic self, softens, becomes more transparent, allowing the unmanifested, your true being, peace, stillness to shine through. It's an act of deep wisdom and trust in life.
These portals, they sound like different pathways, different techniques maybe, to get to the same profound state of presence, of connecting with that deeper reality.
That's a good way to see it. Different doorways into the same room, the room of the now.
So, given these profound shifts in perception and being, where does something as fundamental to human experience as love fit into this framework? Is love also considered one of these portals?
Interestingly, no. Tolle clarifies that love is not a portal in itself, but rather what comes through the portal.
Ah, okay, so it's a result of being present.
Yes. As soon as one of these portals to the unmanifested presence, inner body awareness, surrender is open within you, love is naturally present. It's not necessarily as an intense emotion, but as the deep feeling realization of oneness. It's a state of being, a profound recognition of the interconnectedness of all life flowing from that connection to being.
So it's different from the love we normally talk about.
Often, yes. He explains that true, lasting, unconditional love cannot genuinely flourish unless one becomes relatively free from mind identification and one's presence is intense enough to dissolve the grip of the pain body. This is a critical and often difficult insight because most relationships that people call love relationships are, in truth, deeply rooted in egoic needs.
Egoic needs, like what?
Like an unconscious addiction to another person, a need for validation, a way to avoid facing oneself, or a pervasive fear of being alone or losing the other person. These relationships often oscillate wildly between periods of intense pleasure or excitement and equally intense pain, conflict, drama, jealousy.
The love-hate dynamic.
Exactly. This happens because people often confuse egoic attachment, clinging, neediness, and codependency with genuine love. True love, Tolle suggests, has no opposite. If your love has an opposite like hatred, intense jealousy, possessiveness, resentment, then it wasn't true love in the first place. It was an egoic need, an attempt to use the other person, consciously or unconsciously, to cover up your own internal pain, fear, or sense of incompleteness.
That's a powerful, perhaps confronting distinction, separating genuine love, this realization of oneness from egoic attachment and need.
It really challenges conventional notions of romance.
It does. So if that's the case, then relationships, rather than being solely about finding someone to complete us or make us happy, they actually become a profound reflection of our own inner state. And maybe even a spiritual practice in themselves.
Precisely. That's the potential. Relationships have this incredible power to become your most potent spiritual practice, or sadhana, as it's called in some traditions.
How does that work in practice?
It involves consciously observing your own inner state when you're interacting with a partner, or even just thinking about them, noticing the subtle or not so subtle emergence of anger, irritation, jealousy, defensiveness, the urge to control, the need to be right, any form of inner resistance, but observing it without judgment.
We're seeing it arise.
Just seeing it arise in yourself. This non-judgmental observation brings these unconscious patterns, often fueled by the pain body, into the light of your awareness. And awareness itself begins to disempower them. Tolle suggests that the complete acceptance of a partner as he or she is, right now, without any inner need to judge them, criticize them, or try to change them into who you think they should be. That is the single greatest catalyst for genuine transformation in a relationship. And it's also essential for moving beyond your own ego's constant machinations.
Radical acceptance of the other person.
Radical acceptance. In that state, he says, all the mind games, the manipulation, the blaming, they just cease. And the addictive clinging and neediness, which often masquerade as love, start to dissolve. If both partners agree to enter this space of radical acceptance, they can then express their thoughts and feelings honestly, but without blame or accusation, listening to each other openly. This creates a vast still space between them where true connection, true intimacy based on being can actually emerge.
That sounds ideal, but what if only one person is doing this?
Yes. He acknowledges that if one partner becomes deeply rooted in presence, really practices acceptance and non-reaction, and the other partner is still strongly mind-identified, still run by their ego and pain body, this dynamic can become a major challenge, primarily for the unenlightened partner.
Why for them?
Because their fixed positions, their egoic patterns, their demands, their dramas, they are not being met with the usual resistance or reaction from the conscious partner. There's nothing for the ego to push against. This lack of resistance can make those egoic structures feel shaky, unstable. It can be deeply uncomfortable, even infuriating for the ego. And eventually, Tolle suggests, this can sometimes lead to the collapse of those rigid egoic patterns, potentially forcing a deeper awakening in that partner too. Or, admittedly, the relationship might end if the gap in consciousness becomes too wide.
That's a truly profound and clearly potentially challenging transformation for any relationship. Very different from fixing the other person.
Completely different. It starts within.
And what about compassion? How does compassion connect to this state of awakened being and how we interact not just with partners, but with all of life?
True compassion, in Tolle's framework, isn't just pity or sympathy. It's introduced as a deep felt awareness of an inherent bond you share with all creatures, not just other humans, all of life.
A bond based on what?
It's rooted in two fundamental recognitions. First, our shared mortality, the inherent vulnerability and transience of all physical forms, the fact that everything arises, exists for a while, and then subsides, the inevitable return to dust, as it were.
Acknowledging impermanence.
Yes.
Yeah.
And second, and perhaps more profoundly, our shared immortality recognizing the eternal being, the one consciousness, the formless life that underlies and pervades all these temporary forms, seeing the timeless in the temporary.
Okay.
So compassion, in this deeper sense, is a state where the natural sadness that might arise from recognizing the transient nature of form merges with the profound joy of being, the peace and aliveness that comes from connecting with the eternal dimension that exists beyond all forms.
Sadness and joy together.
Yes, a simultaneous recognition of both the fragility of form and the indestructibility of essence. And this merging, this compassionate awareness, holds immense healing and transformative power. It's about looking beyond the superficial veil of form, beyond the personality, the history, the temporary manifestation of another person or creature, and truly feeling their radiant, eternal being through your own connection to being.
Seeing the essence beneath the appearance.
Exactly. This awareness allows you to recognize that suffering, while undeniably real and painful on the level of form and ego, is ultimately from the perspective of timeless being, a product of identification with that limited form. It's rooted in illusion. This deep connection, this felt recognition of oneness with all life, becomes a powerful force for healing and transforming the world around you. Not by fighting against darkness or negativity, but simply by bringing in the light of conscious presence, acceptance, and compassion.
Wow. We've certainly covered a vast landscape of incredibly profound ideas here. From redefining enlightenment to understanding the illusion of time, the pain body, and the absolute power of presence. It's a lot to take in.
It really is. Deep waters.
Definitely. So let's try to distill some really practical applications now, some rapid-fire insights that you listening can maybe start integrating immediately into your everyday lives. What are some tangible, real-world ways we can begin to cultivate this presence and awareness starting right now?
Okay, practical tools. Let's start with simple self-observation. A truly easy yet powerful practice is just to regularly pause throughout your day and ask yourself internally, am I at ease at this moment? Or maybe, what's going on inside me right now?
Just checking in.
Just check in. And then simply observe whatever thoughts and emotions are present, but without judging them, without analyzing them, without getting entangled in their stories. Just watch them flow by, like noticing clouds drift across the sky. Witnessing, not judging.
So it's about becoming that neutral observer of our own inner state. What else can we do, especially maybe when we feel disconnected or lost in thought?
Body awareness is incredibly effective for grounding. Make it a habit to continuously feel the inner energy field of your body, whenever you remember.
Yeah.
When your mind isn't actively engaged in a specific task, just take a moment to flood your body with consciousness. Gently focus on different parts. Feel the aliveness in your hands, then your feet, maybe your chest. Feel that subtle tingling or warmth. Gradually expand it to feel the whole inner body as a single field of energy.
Bringing attention inside the skin.
Exactly. This immediately anchors you in the Kanna County. Now, pulls your attention out of the abstract world of thought and into direct sensory reality.
And what if the mind is still very active, maybe buzzing with worries or anxieties? What's a direct route to finding some stillness then?
For an overactive mind, conscious breathing is often the most direct portal back to presence. Simply focus all your attention on the physical sensation of your breath flowing in and out. Feel the air entering your body. Feel your abdomen gently rise and fall. Don't try to control or change the breath, just observe its natural rhythm. This seemingly simple practice can gradually quiet the mind, put you back in touch with your inner body, and create those crucial gaps in the incessant thought stream.
Just focusing on the breath. Simple but powerful.
Very.
Now, how does this apply when we actually need to think? For problem solving, planning, being creative. We can't just stop thinking entirely all the time, can we?
No, absolutely not. The goal isn't to eliminate thought, but to end the compulsive, unconscious thinking. You use your mind, but in a creative and conscious way. Tola suggests that when an answer, a solution, or a creative idea is needed, you practice stopping thinking altogether for a brief moment first. By focusing fully on your inner energy field, or your breath, becoming aware of the stillness within, even just for a few seconds. Then, when you resume thinking, you'll often find it's fresher, more insightful, less reactive, and genuinely more creative, because it's arising from that space of stillness, not just recycling old patterns. He even suggests you can learn to think with your whole body, oscillating fluidly between focused thought and that background awareness of inner stillness. The thinking then becomes much more effective, much less compulsive.
Thinking from stillness. Interesting concept. And what about in our interactions with other people, especially, in today's world where everyone seems to be multitasking or mentally somewhere else even when they're physically present?
That's where practicing the art of listening comes in. True listening, not just hearing words while formulating your reply, but listening with your whole body.
Listening with the body.
Yes, feeling your own inner energy field, your own presence, as you listen to the other person. This practice naturally takes your attention away from your own internal mental commentary, your judgments, your pre-planned responses. It creates a still, open space within you that allows you to truly hear the other person, perhaps even sensing what's being said beneath the words without the distorting filter of your own mind's interference. You're essentially giving the other person space, the space to simply be. And Tolle argues that's arguably the most precious gift you can offer anyone.
Giving presence as a gift. I like that. Now, I often find myself, like many people, waiting in queues, stuck in traffic, just idling between tasks. Can those often frustrating moments actually be used for this practice?
Oh, absolutely. Tolle specifically highlights this. Transform those moments of waiting into presence practice. Instead of succumbing to the usual restlessness, impatience, mental complaining, or boredom, consciously use these opportunities to go deeper into the now. Focus on your inner body. Feel your breath. Observe your surroundings without judgment. This simple shift changes your entire state from one of denying or resisting the present moment to actively embracing it, inhabiting it fully.
So waiting becomes an opportunity, not an annoyance.
Exactly. His counsel is quite direct. When you catch yourself slipping into waiting, snap out of it. Come into the present moment. Just be and enjoy being. Even waiting can be peaceful if you're fully present with it.
Those are all really tangible practices, thank you. What about some of the common emotional challenges we all face? Things like complaining or constant fear and worry. How does this framework help us address those directly?
Okay, let's take complaining first. Make a conscious effort, a commitment perhaps, to catch yourself complaining, whether it's happening silently in your thoughts or being spoken aloud. Complaining about situations, other people, your surroundings, anything.
Become aware of the complaining habit.
Yes, and recognize it immediately for what it is. A form of non-acceptance of what is in that moment. And fundamentally, it's often a form of self-victimization, making yourself powerless by blaming external factors. Tolle presents a very clear framework here. If something in your present moment feels genuinely intolerable or dysfunctional, you essentially have three options.
Three options. Okay.
1, remove yourself from the situation. 2, change the situation through action. Or 3, accept the situation totally, exactly as it is right now. The crucial step is to choose one of these now, decisively, without making excuses or indulging in negativity. And if action is needed, option 1 or 2, drop the inner negativity first, then take clear, effective action from a place of acceptance or presence.
Choose. Leave, change, or accept, and drop the negativity regardless.
That's the key. Don't pollute your inner space.
And what about fear and worry? They seem to be epidemic, especially anxiety about the future.
Fear and worry, as Tolle explains them, are almost always rooted in psychological time. They involve projecting your mind into an imaginary future that hasn't happened yet and may well never happen, and then reacting emotionally to that mental projection now.
Fearing ghosts.
In a way, yes. So the practice is acknowledge fear when it arises, feel it as an energy, a sensation in your body, but make a conscious effort not to let it rise into your mind. Don't feed it with more fearful thoughts, scenarios, what ifs.
Just don't fuel the fire.
Exactly. Instead, bring your focus immediately back to the breath. Now anchor yourself in your breath. Feel your inner energy field. Notice your surroundings. The profound truth Tolle offers here is incredibly liberating if you can grasp it. You can always cope with the now, but you can never cope with the future, nor do you have to.
You only ever have to cope with this moment.
Precisely. The strength you need, the wisdom, the right response, the appropriate action, it will be there for you when you need it, which is always in the now, not a moment before. Worrying about it in advance doesn't help. It just drains you.
So it seems the ultimate choice for transformation, the real pivot point, is radical in its simplicity, yet incredibly powerful in its effect.
It truly is. The core choice for transformation, the fundamental decision, is simply to create no more pain for yourself. Full stop. It's to consciously choose to stop feeding suffering through these unconscious thought patterns and emotional reactions rooted in time.
Choose to stop creating suffering.
Yes, this choice sounds radical, maybe even impossible at first, yet Tolle insists it's entirely possible through consistently accessing the power of the now. And surrender is key to this. Remember, surrender here means accepting the isness, the reality of the present moment, without any inner resistance, without mentally labeling it as good or bad, right or wrong. It just is.
Inner acceptance, not outer passivity.
Exactly. It's an inner phenomenon.
Yeah.
A yielding to life as it unfolds moment by moment. It's not passive resignation. You can still take action. Paradoxically, this inner surrender allows for much clearer, more effective, and more powerful action to emerge, action arising from a place of peace and intelligence, not reactive fear or anger.
And if you really can't surrender internally, if the resistance is too strong,
Then, Tolle advises, take action immediately. Either change the situation directly or remove yourself from it if possible. Don't just sit there generating negativity. But his ultimate counsel is clear. Never, ever allow unhappiness, negativity, resistance to find a permanent dwelling place within you. It's always an inside job. You have the choice in how you meet the moment.
this deep dive into the power of now has truly offered, I think, a profound reevaluation of how we relate to ourselves, our minds, our emotions, and the world around us. It's been incredibly rich.
It covers so much fundamental ground.
It really does. So let's try to distill the absolute core actionable insights for you, the listener, to really help integrate these powerful ideas moving forward. What are the essential takeaways?
Okay, firstly, and perhaps most importantly, remember this. You are not your mind. That constant internal chatter, those judgments, opinions, worries, regrets, they are not your true identity. They're just conditioned mental activity. Begin to observe these mental processes impartially, without identifying with them. This simple act of observation is itself a powerful, liberating act of presence.
Okay, takeaway one. I am the observer, not the thoughts.
Exactly.
Okay.
Secondly, the present moment is all you ever truly have. Really let that sink in. Let go of the powerful illusion of psychological time, that constant preoccupation with past regrets or future anxieties. All problems, as Tolle defines them, mind-made suffering, exist only in the mind-projected past or future. Life is, and always will be, happening right now.
Takeaway two. Life is now. Let go of psychological time.
Perfect. Thirdly, actively cultivate presence. Presence isn't passive, it's a state of intense, alert stillness, and it's accessible to you through practical, everyday practices we discussed. Focusing on your inner body's energy fields, conscious breathing, observing silence, contemplating space, being fully engaged in simple activities, presence is like an alchemical fire. It transmutes suffering and allows your true nature, your being, to shine through.
Takeaway three. Practice presence through body, breath, silence, space, action.
Yes. And finally, number 4, embrace surrender and acceptance. This isn't about giving up, becoming a doormat, or being passive. It's a radical, courageous inner yes to what is in the present moment, without internal resistance, without arguing with reality. This profound choice instantly dissolves negativity, breaks the cycle of suffering, and opens the door to an unshakable inner peace, fundamentally transforming your entire experience of life itself.
Takeaway 4. Surrender internally to what is, accept the now. Powerful stuff.
The core pillars, really.
As we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with a provocative thought, something Tolle implies throughout the material. What if those seemingly negative events, the challenges, the difficulties in your life, what if they are not simply bad things happening to you? What if they are precisely what's needed, perfectly designed almost, to force your consciousness to evolve, to push you, maybe kicking and screaming at first, toward the very liberation and deeper awareness we've spent this time discussing today?
It's a truly compelling idea, isn't it? It fundamentally challenges our conventional understanding of misfortune, of bad luck, of suffering. It invites us to look for and perhaps find profound meaning and incredible opportunity for growth, even in the most difficult, the most painful circumstances life throws our way.
It suggests that suffering isn't just an obstacle, but potentially the catalyst.
Exactly. It suggests that deep suffering, when it's met not with more resistance, but with conscious presence and surrender, can actually be the ultimate catalyst, the very thing that forces you, finally, to relinquish your identification with the false mind-made self and surrender fully to the now. And that surrender can lead to the most profound and lasting transformation possible.
This deep dive really serves as a practical guide to, well, spiritual enlightenment, not as some far-off, abstract goal for saints or mystics, but as a living, breathing reality that's accessible to anyone right here in every single moment.
If we choose to access it.
We truly hope this exploration has given you some profound insights and, importantly, some practical tools for your own journey into presence. If you found this deep dive valuable, please do consider rating it or sharing it with someone else who might also benefit from exploring these powerful ideas.
Sharing the presence, perhaps.
Exactly. Until next time, keep diving deep.